You are live. Yes. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Gavel Chronicles. My name is Adriana. I also go by Adri. I'm so excited to have this panel here today. I have Bibi Ali, Zazie Lopez, and Reginald or Reg Green. And they're all lawyers in their own sectors, practicing law, all in the public sector in different ways. They have different avenues and journeys into how they got into the legal field. And they're here to talk about their experiences, what inspired them to become lawyers, some of the tips and tricks that they've gathered in their career, some advice they might have for you, and just a little bit about them. We're just going to be able to learn about them individually and them as lawyers, and I'm so excited. So first and foremost, I'm just going to have them introduce themselves, and I'll go in the way that you are on my screen. So Bibi, go ahead. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yes, so hi everyone, my name is Bibi Ali. I'm originally from Guyana. I came here when I was very young, but I've lived and grown up in New York pretty much my entire life. Currently living in the Bronx. I'm an immigration attorney. I work for the International Rescue Committee, working with asylees and refugees and aiding them in their immigration processes. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. Reg, who are you? What do you do? Where are you from?
I'm originally from a small town in Western Kentucky called Paducah, and it is called Paducah because it's in Western Kentucky. I grew up there and left Kentucky pretty young, graduated from University of Chicago at 19, and began my career in education down in Miami-Dade County with Teach for America. Got the bug, was like, I'm too young to go to law school, and decided to see how good I could be. And they say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So that's where I went to New York. I started working in KIPP schools, charter reform movement, early 2000s. Everybody was in it. It was like civil rights movement at the time. And I loved it. And I ended up building my own charter school out in Watts. So yeah, I like went cross country, built the charter school, and became a superintendent of cluster wraparound services schools. And then I realized the people that made all the decisions were lawyers. And ultimately, all the lawmakers were lawyers. And the people who decided what the laws are going to be, even if they weren't the lawmakers, were lawyers. And that's what propelled me to go to school. I ended up at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office because I wanted to practice and use my background and skills to bring about justice for people on an everyday track.
I love it. Thank you. And last but not least, Zazie. Who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Hello, everyone. I'm from the South Bronx, born and raised, and I work for the Department of Homeland Security, Office for Civil Rights, Civil Liberties. I am not currently a lawyer. I am a deputy director in their compliance branch, so I do investigations. But I did spend over 8.5 years doing institutional reform with the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, Special Litigation Section. And I still maintain my New York license. So I still make my CLE credits. So I am still a lawyer.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. Some of you touched upon this a little bit, but my first question for you, actually, no, wait, pause. To my audience members who are here with us, where are y'all coming in from? What are some of the things that you want to hear about in this panel? We are definitely going to have some time for you to ask questions. So anything that comes up for you, feel free to throw it in the chat. But we will start a little bit already, but what inspired you to pursue a career in law, and how has your journey evolved since you first entered the legal profession? I'll start backwards this time. So Zazie, let's go with you first.
Well, I'm from the South Bronx, and so I did not want to go to detention. That is really what started. I remember my communications arts teacher he had a number system on the board for detention, and he would keep my class after. And so I would say, "Hey, sir," and I would just freestyle an argument. No matter what it was, I would just try something. And he was the first person to say to me, I will knock down 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you really should consider law school. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know any lawyers at the time. I think the only one I knew, and this is dating me very, very much was Jimmy Smith's on like LA Law or something like that. Like I didn't know what a lawyer was. And so that inspired me to think about it. And that's what I was like, okay, fine. Well, I'd like to argue. I should become a lawyer. And that's what led me to law school. But, you know, through my journey, I think it's moved away from me arguing to try to get out of something, to try to like be a voice for the voiceless in the work that I do. So it has transitioned a little bit from, I'm still that spunky kid in the Bronx trying to like get out of something, but now it's like focusing on, oh, we lost Adriana. It's more focusing on the, you know, being a voice for others. So let me just take over. I'm going to go with Reg since she went backwards. So same question for you, Reg.
Right. So I think I touched on a little bit what inspired me to go into law. It's one, I wanted to have the power and not being in a courtroom and being in control of anybody's life, but the power over the language of the law. The law determines what we do in our civil society and how we're going to manage when there are upsets and how we're going to manage when people are in need. So I wanted to be a part of that group. I think growing up in the South, in a pretty rural area with a lot of racism that wasn't as subtle as you might experience maybe in a city, but more overt. I knew that when you know the law, you can protect yourself. And if somebody hurts you, despite you being able to know the law and protect yourself, there is redress. You can do something with that when you know. And so I thought that I was going to be in nonprofits, working as an educational, reformer or lobbyist. I was going to go to the Hill or something and change education. But it was the moment that I kind of got to law school that it evolved, because what's the point of spending all this money if you're not going to at least practice for a little bit? That was what one of the professors said to me. I mean, just find out if you want to be in the courtroom or if you don't want to be in the courtroom, but you got to practice, because why not? Especially if you're going to go through the bar exam, you might as well. And I thought, well, if I'm going to practice, if I'm going to give it a shot, then I need to do the thing that I'm strong at, which is convincing people to do things. And the courtroom is the place you need to do that the most, I think, and particularly in the jury trial. And I work in criminal law because it's the greatest opportunity to impact people's lives. I mean, it's not the most important way that you impact people's lives, because in a lot of ways, criminal law is not redemptive. I mean, the thing has already happened. So you're not really fixing anything when you go through the legal process. But it's how much you can do to convince people to do better by that person, or how much you can convince people to do the right thing, even if they understand the consequences that someone could be in prison or that someone could not be in prison. And I think that's been what has evolved over time, is really getting engaged in the actual practice of the law. I will now pass it off to Bibi.
Thank you, Rich. So I think what inspired me to pursue law, it kind of took me a while to get to where I am. My background has always been political science, international law, more of like, the international sphere. And I think one thing that really influenced me to get into that field was just my parents' experience. My parents were lucky enough to be English speaking and had a little bit of an easier time, navigating just the nuances of, resettling in a different country. But as I grew up, met different people, were in different spaces, it became a little bit more abundant to me that it's really difficult, even if you know English, especially if you don't speak English, having certain education levels. And I knew I wanted to always be in a space where I can be helping people in that way, especially if I had the privilege and opportunity to go to school and just be able to, be in these spaces with people and be able to connect with them and them to feel safe with me. And my trajectory to law has, like I said, been it took me a while to get here. I was in nonprofit spaces, working with people more in the international sector. And then I finally set my mind on going to law school. And I knew then that I wanted to be in immigration, especially when everything was going on and starting in 2016, and immigration laws were just getting progressively a little bit more worse. and how it's evolved. I know I always wanted to be in the immigration sector once I got in it. I think just what kind of immigration I wanted to do has evolved. So I've had experience in business immigration. It was a little bit too corporate for me. I wanted a little bit more client contact. And I got into the nonprofit sector, working with asylum seekers. And once I got my first job out of law school, being able to work with people in removal defense and being in court, which, like Reg, I did not want to be in court. And I, echo your sentiment is like, if you want to practice, you should get the experience just to see if you like it or not. And I did it, and have a complicated relationship with it, but it really did make me a better person, a better attorney, to be honest, as a baby attorney in this field. So right now I had decided to take a break from removal defense, but still working with asylees and refugees. So.
I love it. Thank you all for sharing your stories on, what inspired you to pursue law. I think you all have such different avenues, right? And I think it's important to note that regardless of if you go straight from undergrad, if you take some time into a different career, if you take some time knowing you want to go to law school but are doing something else, like that's okay, right? And your journey is your journey, and you're still going to accomplish what you want to do within a legal field. But just knowing, you might have a different path, and that's okay. It also makes you who you are within your career trajectory, and it speaks to your experiences. So with that, my next question is, the legal profession is often portrayed as highly competitive. How do you balance the competitive nature of the field with maintaining professional relationships and integrity? And then also, somebody asked from the audience, what was your motivation to continue even when you doubted yourself? And I think that goes into the competitive nature, right? So if you want to tie that in of what that looks like for you, let's go ahead and do that. Reg, we will start with you first.
I found law school nearly unbearable because of how competitive it was unnecessarily. Because I had a career before I went to law school, I knew that the grades or the sniping at each other to get an advantage on the grades was not going to bear out in the real world. Because in the real world, you have to cooperate with people. You have to collaborate with folks, even if you're on separate sides or other sides of an issue. That is how you get things done. And the most contentious relationships in litigation are usually yield the worst results in the outcome of that case for the person that's harmed. And I say this as a prosecutor, at a state level. When I have a defense attorney that is recalcitrant or taking things personally or really, really combative, it usually doesn't work out for the disposition in the case, not because I take it personally, that they usually end up wasting time. And that is time that could have been used to get to a better negotiation status for their client, or it's time that could have been spent not in pretrial detention, or it's time that could have been spent doing whatever disposition or sentence needed to be done or whatever restitution needed to be paid. And I know that the law seems like it's very competitive, but that is a function of the culture of law. And as the president of my law school, we would always go through the results of mental health screenings for law students. And it found that when people go into law school, they have a certain level of depression, right? When they leave law school, that entire class gets evaluated and their depression levels have doubled. And then because of the trauma of law school, it actually never goes back to homeostasis. So it's clear that competitive nature of law school is not good for students, and it's not good for you in the law. And so the way that I maintain a relationship is I remember that I'm not competing with anybody. They really have a job to do. And my job is to do right by my client. In this case, it's the people of the state of New York, which involves both the defendant and any of the witnesses in the case. I have to do right by them. And if I'm comparing myself to other folks or competing with how someone else is doing it, I'm likely not doing my job.
I love it. I love that. I think sometimes the only competition we should have is ourselves, right? Being better than who we were, yesterday. So absolutely balancing that out. Zazie, same thing. How do you balance?
I love competition. I don't think I could have gotten out of the South Bronx without it. I needed to motivate myself. And I wasn't competing with people in my class. I was competing with myself. You hit it on the head, Adriana. Like, I was competing with my own self-doubt. I think the other question was, how do you motivate yourself when there's doubt, right? I was competing with that person. And I needed to be like, no, I belong here. I have a space here. I have a voice that needs to be heard in this space, right? And so for me, competition, like my sister had a trophy. I wanted a trophy. How did I get a trophy? Well, I needed to go to school. Okay, fine, great. I went to school, and then I never got the trophy. But still, like, then I was like, wait, I don't like being second. So I'm going to try to be, valedictorian. And it just kept, it just kept pushing me. But the one thing is, you can't allow that to turn you into something that's negative, right? And so you get more with honey than you do with vinegar. And one of the cases that I had while at DOJ, it was a very contentious litigation. It was extremely contentious. And I remember they didn't even want us to allow us to talk with the inmates. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to find the good. I'm going to find the good, right? And I worked my way to get working with them, so much so that when we did, resolve it with a consent decree, and we're monitoring compliance with that agreement, they thanked me. They were like, thank you. Like the career folks thanked me, and they started implementing programs or methods of or metrics, so to speak. And I was like, oh, where did you get those logs from? And they were like, oh, you asked for it in litigation, so we figured it was something you would need. And it was just a level of respect that was gained, because I was like, I'm not going to allow whatever contention to keep this from moving forward, right? We know why we are here and what's important. And so once we move the people who were contentious, and I focused on the people who were not, that's where, things moved forward. And so for me, I don't let the competition of the profession bother me. And I've been blessed to be surrounded by people who just want to keep you moving forward, support you to move forward. And those who, back in the days with the paper chase, where they're like pulling pages out of notebooks and stuff, that's, first of all, everything's electronic now, so you can't really pull a page out of a notebook. But, like, I didn't have that experience in law school. I was blessed to be surrounded by, friends who really wanted to see each other succeed. And so that outlook is how I carry it through in everything else that I do.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you. And BB, same thing. How do you balance the competitive nature?
Yeah, so like Zazie, I have always been a competitive person, but then when it came to like school and then my career, it was more about like not competing with others, but like everyone has said here, like competing with yourself, and like the question, like how do you manage self-doubt? For me in law school, I went to law school 5 years after I had graduated undergrad. So I, was in the work field already. And I was a little bit more sure of myself. And same thing like Zazie, like I think finding people who wanted to support you and root for you as well as you root for them, and, we're all in the same boat, is very, you need to do that if you're in law school. You need to find that group that's going to help support you, rather than feeling like you need to compete with person X, Y, and Z. And then outside of law school in my career, I'm sure this exists in immigration, but I found so far within immigration that we rely on each other so much in this field for help, especially when the laws are changing every day. And, you might have a colleague that works in a different firm or organization that has done something better than you, and that can help you in your case. And at the end of the day, I think this has been said, it's like, you're doing what you're doing for the client. And if you need to ask for help, you should ask for help. You shouldn't have pride in that sense. And I think handling, but the question was self-doubt, I think it's inevitable. You're always going to have self-doubt about something, right? For me, I think winning my first asylum case was definitely a confidence booster. Going to court was not in the trajectory for me, and I pushed myself to do it. And I was terrified and scared. And I was like, how am I going to do this and speak up for this person whose lives depends on me? But I think you have to know yourself, right? Like what you're capable of, what kind of worker you are, and what kind of work you're going to put into advocating for someone. And if you feel comfortable that you've done your job, you have to push yourself, and you have to believe that you're going to do the best possible to get through it. And I think the gratefulness and like comments from the people that you work with, and how grateful they are, it means a lot. It means like you feel like you're doing what you're supposed to doing, and you're where you're supposed to be. So
absolutely. Thank you. And I love all of those answers. I mean, I think self-doubt, anxiety, all of that comes with almost anything that you do, especially if it's new, right? And sometimes you have to get through it in order to understand like, oh, this is how I show up in this situation, right? And so for all of you in the audience who are either new to the field or trying to think about the field, like if this is something for me, there's going to be some scary things. Like that's just life, right? And it's just about like, how do I keep moving past that scary thing? Is this scary thing part of just like a little bit outside of my comfort zone, or am I in a danger zone? Like, am I in true danger if I pursue this? And so thinking about it that way, like in order for you to grow, you do have to leave that comfort zone. So finding your community, right, of who is supporting you through this process of going through law school or starting a career, or if you're going to any other kind of school or any kind of training or whatever it is that you're pursuing, like finding those people in your circle who are truly going to support you. And then also figuring out what grounds you, right? And like, how do you talk to yourself? So absolutely, Kaya, thank you for that answer, for that question. For anybody else who's in the audience, feel free to throw some questions in the comments. We will definitely dip them in there. For now, we will move on to the next one, which flows right into what advice do you have for aspiring lawyers and law students who are just starting their legal careers based on your own experiences and your lessons learned? And we will start with BB.
The question is what advice for people starting? I would say don't be afraid to try new things, different areas of law. Even if you think, this is the field for me, you don't have to be in a nonprofit, nor do you have to be in a corporate law firm. There's different ways that you can work in law. So just don't be afraid to try different things. And that's how you know what you don't like and how you know what you do like and what works for you. In terms of lessons learned, I think kind of goes back to the self-doubt, but not feeling pressured by what your other colleagues are doing and listening to your gut. One very hard lesson I learned is that right out of law school, I had just taken the bar. I saw all of my colleagues getting jobs or starting their work. And I was like, oh my God, I need to do this as well. I hadn't had anything planned. And I felt the pressure, and I took a job that I shouldn't have taken. And I feel like while I was interviewing, all the red flags were there, but the pressure got to me. And it was just not a good space for me. It was not a good work environment. And I made a decision to leave it after a few months, which is hard because it's very hard for me to like quit things. But I had to listen to myself, and it was a lesson in really being mindful about who you're working with, what that environment looks like, who the people looks like, and what they value in you as a person that's showing up there 8+ hours a day. So listen to your gut.
Absolutely. Thank you. Reg, same question. Advice for aspiring lawyers and law students or early careers?
It's similar to what Bibi said. I try to refrain from the reflexive no. Try as much as you can to stay open to opportunities. And I really do stick with try not to say no. It doesn't mean pile too many things on your plate. You got to have your own judgment and know what your bandwidth is. And so there are times where you might just sidestep it, but just being open, like this might not be it right now, but please keep me in mind. I might want to try that later. Instead of the solid, no, I don't want to do it. Because that's where you just never know. You never know in this profession what you want to do. A lesson learned for me is I really did not want to litigate. I really didn't think I wanted to even practice law. And I did the mock trial team, and I put myself out there in this oratory competition for moot court. And these are things I had no intention of doing, but someone was like, you know what, just give it a shot. And I think by giving it a shot, I found something that really excited me and made me passionate in the field. And so I would give that. The other piece of advice is find people that you think are who you want to be in the profession. If you can find folks that emulate some of the characteristics that you hope to have when you're practicing law, then you need to talk to them. You need to engage with them. You don't have to do everything like them, but getting their experience and understanding why they're the way that you want to be will help you get there. And at the end of the day, if you want to be them, nobody minds being flattered. So there's somebody that's going to be in your court when it comes down to, getting that job or getting some support down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you. Actually, follow up to that, because you mentioned like finding somebody who emulates what you like, or, who you want to be. Like, what did that look like for you? Like, what did that networking look like for you? How would you reach out to somebody that holds those characteristics? How do you have that conversation?
I had the benefit of working in the community as an educator. And, a lot of my experiences were like cold calls to parents, just to get to know them. These folks are 20, 30 years older than me in some cases, or they're like a year older than me. And we're, and learning through that process that everybody is just a person. And actually, they'll give you a lot more grace than you would ever imagine. Just put yourself in the same situation. If you got called, you'll probably just pick up the call and be nice, right? Because most people are actually just nice about things. And I think keeping in mind that you're not talking to anybody other than a human being. And often they want to impart the knowledge, particularly with lawyers, because lawyers love to give other people advice. They actually really want you to call them. To take off the cool when it comes to the conversation with any lawyer. They will love it, especially if you're asking their opinion.
I love that. And yeah, absolutely. Like, let's stop thinking that networking has to be the scary thing. Just have a conversation. Just people love to talk about themselves. So absolutely. Zazie, same question. What advice do you have for aspiring lawyers, law students, folks starting in their legal careers?
First thing, if anyone wants to talk to me, I love it. So the thing I would say is being a lawyer should never define you. You are more than the profession. And so often, or at least, when I started out, I've been in this game for little over 20 years, 20 years, actually. I celebrated my 20th and reunion the day my nephew graduated with his master's from Penn. I went to Penn law school, and I got to watch him, and I was like, that is the Brown legacy. It was, I was so proud of him. But for me, it's taken me a long time to find my voice. Like when I started out, I felt like I had to tie this back and have the straight hair and stay late, and I didn't enjoy any of that. And then I found my purpose in the work that I did with the government. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I just knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I just didn't know what that meant. And to find my purpose and to really enjoy it, that is what I think you should aspire to. I thought I was going to be a litigator. I did moot court. I did mock trial. I actually watched the OJ trial because I was like, that's what I'm going to be. I want to be like them. And, I found a different path. And for me, I love the brainstorming and the, problem solving that comes with the law. And I want to be that person. I enjoy institutional reform because I want to be able to understand the why. Like, why do things break down? Right. And so I didn't allow the system of the legal profession, right, or working in a law firm, because I went from law school to a law firm. I didn't get stuck there. And I didn't let that define me. I also found mentors. I found the mentors. Some places they like to pair you up with people and say, this is your mentor. You need to find the person who is going to inspire you to want to be better at whatever it is that you're doing. If you want to be a better writer, then find the person who's going to help you be a better writer by working with them and learning from them, continuously learning. The legal profession, depending on where you are licensed, you have to have this continuing legal education, right? CLEs. And there is a benefit to that. You continue to grow and learn and expand your understanding, not only of the law, but of what it means to be a professional, right? And so taking on more leadership focused courses that helps you grow with your mindset, right? And so being more emotionally intelligent, or learning about critical thinking or time management. There are all these skills that are out there that help you be a more well-rounded individual. And if you focus on that, you're going to be an awesome attorney, because at the end of the day, it's people. It's people in the courtroom. If you're in a courtroom, it's people in the courtroom. There are people in the jury, and it's a person, plaintiff versus defendant, people versus people. You're in private practice, it might be corporation versus corporation, but in the end of the day, there are people in those corporations, right? So it's about people. So for me, it's if you stay true to yourself and you find what you enjoy. To what BB said earlier, right? She the first job was not the right fit. Find what you enjoy. You're going to love this profession. Do something you don't enjoy, it's going to be toxic. So, just remember, this isn't who you are. You are you, and you are bringing yourself and adding to the profession.
I love that. I do. And I think also understanding that, if you decide to go into the legal field and then you don't like it, and you try another sector of it and you don't like that, and try another one and you still don't like it, it's okay to be like, you know what, this wasn't for me, but I tried. Right. And moving on to something else, or the other way around, where it's you're starting in something else and you're like, no, that's not what I want. Law is actually what I really, really want. And there was something that was holding me back from pursuing it. Right. It's okay to go through career changes, right, within the career trajectory that you are. Right. There's a lot of people that jump around from public sector to private sector to government to whatever, and to different aspects of the law, and that's all good and dandy. It's just dependent on what you want to do, what your skills are, and what you enjoy. So absolutely. And just try new things. You can't figure out what you're good at if you don't try. And if you fail once, it's okay, keep trying. I think somebody once told me the reason that 7-Up is called 7-Up is because they had to create that formula 7 times in order for it to actually work out into the way that it tastes now. Right. And so just keep trying. With that, so I know, Zazie, you mentioned the law, and law is about people. So I feel like a lot of times I've heard some of the skills you need to really, really learn in order to be a good lawyer is the people skills. Right. And so this goes into my question about what non-legal work experiences have you had that provided you with transferable and valuable skills for your current legal career? And we will start with Reg. I'm you're on mute.
Before I became an educator, I spent a lot of time doing public service and community service. So, I grew up in Bible Belt. I grew up in a Southern Baptist home. And so every day I went to church. It was almost every day. And when you go to church that much, you are bound to do community service. That is what's going to happen. You're going to be in a soup kitchen. You're going to be putting turkeys together, Meals on Wheels. I'll be the kid going to the old elderly folks' homes and bringing them food. I think those experiences just made me more comfortable with serving people. I think having the ability to see each person as a valuable individual, someone that is not below you or someone you're above, but someone that you should serve. And I think coming from that tradition has served me quite well. I am never uncomfortable meeting people the first time or offering to support people. I think a lot of our job, whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, I think all of us have done public work, is you have to get people comfortable. They have to be able to open up to you and work with you. Even in the corporate side, learning how to deal with the clients is like really important to maintaining the book of business. So any skills where you've had to serve others, that is at the core of what we do as lawyers, because honestly, lawyers are service providers. That's what we do.
I love it. Thank you. Zazie, same question.
Well, I went straight. So I would say my my organizational experience from college, being a part of various student organization, being a part of, my sorority, right? It talk about service, service to the community. There's a lot of community service there. There's a lot of communication, being able to communicate with different people in different styles. When I went to law school, I was a part of a variety of different student-led organizations. And so being able to present and maintaining my time management so that I could manage my classes, right? The reason why I'm in law school, with the organizations that I'm a part of, and navigating the different requirements for both, right? So there's just a lot, just lived experiences that I would say goes towards being a successful attorney. Surviving the South Bronx, like going from the projects, watching my mother, really build up her credit in the 80s so that she could get the mortgage, right? Get the loan for the home in the Bronx. Like those are skills that you will never learn in any environment, right? How to navigate walking to the bus and like avoiding certain situations in a manner that, like, how do you present yourself and smile in certain situations and be serious in others. Like, there are so many lessons and life lessons that are learned just by who you are and what you walk through every day. Navigating bilingual, right? A bilingual household. My parents spoke only Spanish at home. I'm Puerto Rican. They only spoke Spanish at home. I watched the Spanish news. There are still movies I've never seen in English. No idea. I'm like, but I know it in Spanish, right? So for me, I've lived in these dual experiences. And so it's easy for me to present and pull that language, right? When I'm talking with someone and communicating with them and understanding, wait a minute, this person, maybe we don't speak the same language. We don't speak English or Spanish, but I understand that they are bilingual, or they not speak English at all and is speaking English, partially. And so I'm able to slow down. I'm not going to yell at them. Oh, dear God, no, right? But that's what some people do. But I understand not to do that because of my lived experience. And so I bring all of that, is who I am, and I bring all of that to the work that I do. And there are times when people, they appreciate when you lean in a little bit, because, wait, what was that you said? I didn't hear you. Or that they feel seen, even if it's not the same language, right? And that's because of where I came from and how I was raised. And so for me, I would say it's just there are so many transferable skills that are power skills that everyone talks about, right? Communication, time management, all those other things. That's important. But then there's also that lived experience that you can't really put a name on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Bibi, same question. What non-legal work experience have you had?
Yeah, so I think one thing for me, one was working in HR. I think working in HR helped me with talking, with communicating with people, working with people, and also learning how to advocate for myself when it came to, things that you need from the workplace. And then another thing, just to echo Zazie as well, is just lived experience. I think when, you have immigrant parents, it kind of falls on the kids sometimes to help their parents navigate certain areas, especially when if your parents don't speak English, or they just, it's hard for them to navigate these complex systems. So I think working through that with my parents and then with other family members and friends, and then just other work experiences, has helped me a lot in this legal career. And then I think another thing too is something that, I really like, Zazia, you said, is like, you're kind of meeting people where they're at, right? You're meeting them with kindness, and you might have similar experiences that they have, and you might not, right? You might not get where they're coming from or can imagine, but you kind of have to meet people with kindness and empathy and sympathy. And I think, obviously, if you're able to travel and see the world and meet people, that's great. But sometimes you just don't even need a passport to do that, right? Like, especially if you live in New York. New York is so diverse. You can get that in your neighborhood and another by taking the subway and going to a neighborhood and, seeing where people live, getting involved in communities. And like I said, meeting people where they're at, because I think it makes a difference when you can have these honest conversations with people. I think they're able to see when you genuinely want to help them, or if you're going to reprimand them as children for, not getting something. And it's definitely something you do not want to do, especially if you want your client to trust you. So yeah, I think getting those lived experiences as best as you can, getting involved in your community, it's so easy. Whether that's through a friend or talking to one of us, because I'm sure we have a diverse group of experiences and people that we know. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think something that I've learned from all the different fields and places I have worked at, and I've worked at the DA's office, and I'm not a lawyer, right? But I still worked in somewhere where there was legal entities. And so understanding the skills that I had that allowed me to work within that, right? And still thrive in that environment. And I would say being a barista, I was a barista, so it was very high paced, having to always be friendly, regardless of how somebody showed up at 6 o'clock in the morning before their coffee. As you can imagine how people are. But then also just like knowing that you just have to do a lot, right? But also knowing when to ask for help, right? And so like that, I think I got a lot of those skills working as barista. And then I've worked with children, and children are the most honest people you will ever interact with. They do not care. There is no filter. They will tell you what it is. They will tell you what they like, what they don't like. And so I spent a lot of summers working at summer camp and learning how to navigate children, learning how to navigate the folks who took care of those children, whether it was a guardian, a parent, a nanny, whoever, and then the people that were running the program. And so just like dealing with all different kinds of people from all different kinds of life who just wanted the best for the people they were taking care of, right? And so just understanding what that looked like and how I navigate that has helped me in every single place I've been at, including the DA's office when I was there. My next question actually came in privately, so it's not on the chat, but it's not mine. So it's not that I didn't give it to y'all. But relative to your own expectations, when you decided to pursue this profession, what has been the most surprising element of being a lawyer? So what has been the most surprising element of being a lawyer? And I'll start with BB this time.
The most surprising element of being a lawyer. I think I was surprised at how much I was going to like it. I think going into this field, I mean, none of my family members were lawyers. I think someone else had said on here, like they didn't know much lawyers around them. So I was really the first one in my family to be going into the field, and I just didn't know what to expect. And a lot of people would tell me horror stories. And I was really scared that I wasn't going to like it and that I was making a mistake. And then when I finally got into it and I met people who also really enjoyed being there, I was surprised that, that I enjoyed it and I wanted to stay in it. And I think also what also surprised me is where I ended up now. So I've been trying to find a workplace, a work environment that I was happy with, and that I can have some kind of work-life balance. And for me, I always thought that a place like that didn't exist until this current opportunity came up. And I think it surprised me that I was able to find people that I enjoyed working with who also cared about you as a person. Especially in the immigration field where, you're not only dealing with your own trauma as a human being, but you're also dealing with other people's traumas. And we're not trained, therapists or psychologists to be counseling people, in that area. But I think having people that also care about you and your needs to get through these situations, I was surprised to be able to find something like that. And those places do exist. You just need to work through it and be able to find it and know what you need as a person out of a workplace.
Absolutely. And it's okay to leave a place. That's how everybody here knows I've left multiple jobs all the time. But same question, Reg. What expectations?
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised at how much trust lawyers are given by people, regardless of how old or how new a lawyer is. I think it's a real powerful position to be in. And since there are so many people that go in straight from college to law, I mean, I think just the last stat I remember was 70% do that. So it's more often than not, people are going to go straight through. That steep learning curve that folks who haven't had any other experience undergo, and how people give them that trust. And for the most part, lawyers actually meet that standard. I think I had a perception that maybe that wasn't the case. You'll see a show or a television show. It's like, oh, these people don't know what they're doing. But most of the people that I've met who become lawyers, it's a real responsibility, a serious one. And, just to see people at 23 years old taking care of someone's like worst moment in their life and they're 23 years old. I think sometimes it's like missed because when we think about lawyers, we think of like a Johnny Cochran or these seasoned attorneys, but they all started very young. And that's been the most surprising. So for people aspiring to this, understand everybody's got to start a trial someday. Everybody's got to get their first client. And that is kind of the expectation in this field. And so it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how inexperienced you are. It's about the effort you're putting in and the trust you're able to gain from people.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And Zazie, same question.
I'm going to build on what Reg said. I think the fact that I can change things, that I have the ability to come into a room, one, that someone thinks I know something. Thank you for believing in me. And the fact that I can change a situation, or that I can research, like the power that I have is not just like the girl in the South Bronx, in junior high was just like, freestyling some argument. Now I am pulling together from history and precedents and policies and really crafting an argument that can change someone's life. And that carries so much weight and power and responsibility. And for someone to be heard, because there's so often that you can't find someone to, you hear the people like, I can't find someone to represent you because they're like, well, it might not make money out of it, right? Or it might not be as worth my time. But to be able to say, no, your situation is worthy of being heard. That to me is just so powerful, that I can affect change because I am a lawyer and I am bringing forth someone's petition, whatever that is empowering. And then for me to be able to bring that, story forward, for folks whose voices are not really being heard, that is something I didn't anticipate being able to do when I first heard, oh, you should be a lawyer. Like I again thought it was the Johnny Cochrans or the Jimmy Smiths and the things, on TV. And to be able to be in those rooms and to have that authority, because I am a lawyer, it is something to be treasured, and it is a responsibility that one should protect, right? But to be able to affect change, that's one surprising element. I don't think as a child, as a kid in middle school, I thought that I would be able to do as a lawyer.
I love all of that. Thank you. And I have one last question for you all. You all bring such different perspectives, right? You all grew up in different places, grew up in different ways, went to law school at different times of your life, have gone into the legal career in whole different journeys. So with all of that, how do you believe embracing and celebrating this diversity can lead to more innovative and inclusive approaches to solving legal problems and promoting justice? I'll give y'all about 30 seconds to sit with that, because I know that's a loaded question out here. And then we will start with Zazie.
Diversity is awesome. You need diverse voices in the room, largely because of lived experience. Just thinking about how different, just think about COVID and how different the going home, right? Working from home, how it impacted different communities, those who could go home and those who couldn't. How women took a larger chunk of that and said, well, I have to leave the workforce because I have to take care of the household. Or I'm a single mom. And so when I had the kids with me, I shared custody. When I have the kids with me, managing a very busy workload with 8-year-old twin boys, madness, right? And so everyone's voice, if you had all of those different voices at a table, imagine the different approaches folks would have on how to deal with a specific situation. And that's what diversity brings to the legal profession, right? You can't, if all you have was one voice at the table, you're not going to have innovative solutions to crime, to finances or real estate, or the issue with the housing market, or education, or access to education, or civil rights, or the care and treatment of people in detention, or inmates in a correctional facility, right? Law enforcement. There's so many different issues, and you need diverse voices at the table to really lend a different viewpoint so that you can come to the best solution. And even then, that solution, someone else out of left field could come out and say, that doesn't really work. Let's try this other way, right? And so for me, that's the importance of having diversity at the table. If it was all just white males, we will miss out on a lot of lived experience that could really reframe and reshape this country. And you need that experience at the table in order to really move the needle for democracy forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bibi, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Zazie said. I think we've all seen the news recently with things going on around the world, and even with things going on here in our country, in our own backyard. If we didn't have those voices to amplify their needs, right? Like how can anything be changed? How can anyone understand what people are going through and what's needed, right? Like certain things in this country, they don't work for certain people, right? We need better housing, better access to, medicals. And, without hearing from people who have been through it and have had those lived experiences, things aren't going to change, right? And yeah, I think it's just important that I feel like people just shouldn't be, if you're going through these things and you feel like you don't deserve a space in this field, you absolutely do, because what you've been through matters. People need to see what you've been through, and it can make or break how things are affected here in this country, in your community, abroad. So yeah, yeah.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And last but not least, Reg, same question.
I think it's a blend of both things that have been said by Bibi and Zazie. At the end of the day, the human mind and our collective energy as human beings, human capital, is indeed an infinite resource. The only time it becomes finite is when we limit the different perspectives and different ways of thinking, because that's the only way you can stop human beings from innovating, is to stifle. And when we don't have different perspectives, people with different lived experiences, it doesn't mean we won't innovate. We will. I mean, clearly the world was run by like a bunch of Europeans for like a long time. And that's only one perspective in the world. And there was a very big and broad world. Just imagine what we could have done if there were more people involved in that project of exploration. If there were more people and more humane processes that were in place to create economies. What kind of societies could we build if we maximize human potential? And bringing in diverse backgrounds and having inclusive approaches ensures that we have the maximum potential of humanity in one space. And I just don't see any way that the big problems that we have to solve, whether it be what is currently happening, humanitarian disaster in the Middle East, on our own humanitarian issues in this country when it comes to homelessness, mental health, gun violence. We're not going to fix climate change unless we use the highest potential of humanity. And that means all of us being together and doing that and providing space for all of us to be our best.
Absolutely. I agree to all of this, right? I think regardless of what field you are in or what you do, like diversity matters, right? In every which way and form and spectrum. So thank you all for your answers. We got about 3 minutes left, folks. So whoever is still in the audience, if you have any questions for our panelists that you feel haven't been covered or, just want to throw out, feel free to do that in the next, say, 2 minutes. And if not, any last tidbits that any of you all want to say that may not have been said that's like burning in your chest to get out?
The one thing I think I would add is that it's okay to be vulnerable. We've touched a little bit about, Rich had mentioned mental health, and so often, we put up this wall and we feel like we have to be so strong and brave and like hold up our own crowns. And sometimes you need to be vulnerable, to ask for help. And in whatever fashion that may look like, from a mentor, so through networking, who do you want to be, and reaching out, to therapy, because that could help, to just ensuring that you're not stuck in an isolated environment if you're working from home or you're working remote, right? So just being able to lean in. And I really do think tapping into your emotional intelligence for self-regulation, but also that connection with others. We really do need to connect more with others. And in order to be a successful attorney, you need to connect with people. It really is a people-centric profession. Even the person in the back in the library, if all you want to do is legal research, you're still connecting with people. And so you need to be vulnerable and allow a space to connect with others.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you. Last 30 seconds. Anybody dying to say something? And if not, I just want to thank you all. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, for asking questions. And thank you all, Bibi, Reg, and Zazie, for just sharing your stories and sharing your time it is with my utmost gratitude that I just say thank you. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you for tuning in, and see y'all next month.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adrian. It's great.